The world froze when the Institute of Science and Technology made its announcement. After months filled with speculation, rumors, and harsh dismissal from critics, the Institute confirmed something that sent tremors across boardrooms, labs, and government halls. Maxwell Chakumbutso's self-powered car was real. What many had called impossible was now certified fact. For years, the idea had been ridiculed. A vehicle that produced its own energy without ever being charged, without fuel, without dependence on stations, was mocked as fantasy, dismissed as myth. Yet the official report confirmed what many had already seen rolling along dusty African roads: a car that broke the very rules of physics as the world had known them. In America, the reaction was like a thunderclap. Those who had once branded Maxwell a fraud scrambled to backtrack. Energy giants stood in silence as their billion-dollar empires began to look fragile. Even Tesla, long considered the pioneer of electric cars, suddenly looked outdated. This wasn't just an electric car. This was a machine that never once needed a charger. A car that made charging grids, fuel pumps, battery plants, and entire infrastructures obsolete. The critics who had laughed the loudest fell silent. One popular television analyst, who had once called Maxwell a scammer, was caught live on air unable to answer when asked if he had been wrong. The certification did more than validate a single car. It embarrassed an entire network of skeptics who had built careers on denial. The Institute's findings were detailed and direct. The car carried an entirely new kind of energy system, one that gathered and renewed power continuously. There were no charging ports, no fuel tanks, no emissions. A group of highly respected scientists, some of the sharpest minds in their field, confirmed it was real. This was no illusion, no clever trick. It was a revolution capable of ending the world's reliance on oil. Across Africa, the announcement was more than science. It was triumph. Maxwell Chakumbuto had not only proven the world wrong, he had placed Africa at the center of the century's biggest technological breakthrough. For the first time, the world's future was being redrawn not in Silicon Valley, not in Beijing, but from the African continent itself. But alongside the celebrations, tension was building. In boardrooms from Washington to London, urgent conversations began. This was more than a car. It was a direct threat to oil markets, to battery industries, to carefully built global power structures. History had already shown one pattern. When billions of dollars are on the line, the powerful do not surrender quietly. Within hours of the Institute's certification, a shadow campaign was launched. Emails circulated behind closed doors. Discreet phone calls carried warnings. The mission was clear. If Maxwell's car could not be bought, it had to be ruined. Anonymous stories appeared online, attacking the Institute's reputation. Old pictures of Maxwell were dug up, twisted into tales of fraud and deception. Overnight, a hidden war had started, not fought with weapons, but with rumors, headlines, and doubt. The Institute of Science and Technology suddenly faced heavy fire. Accusations of bribery and foreign influence spread fast. Officials received threats, some veiled, others blunt, yet the scientists refused to bend. One senior researcher stated firmly, "We don't certify politics, we certify science." In Africa, the attacks on Maxwell were seen for what they were: acts of fear. Maxwell, by sharing his invention with the world, had exposed the cracks in the foundations of wealth. His success challenged the status quo and threatened the very systems that had kept billions dependent and subservient for decades. Leaders stood behind him, calling the smear campaigns not just an attack on one man, but on an entire continent. Ordinary people who had long been overlooked began to see themselves in Maxwell's struggle. If he could withstand global pressure, so could they. Meanwhile, in Washington, sharp divisions emerged. Some urged that Maxwell be welcomed into American partnerships, brought closer before others gained ground. Others warned he was too dangerous, that his car threatened the entire economic order. Behind closed doors, a chilling phrase began to circulate: control the car or control the man. What they didn't realize was that Maxwell had been prepared. Weeks earlier, he created a secret file, encrypted, hidden, and timed. If anything happened to him, or if the campaign against him went too far, the file would release itself. Inside were full blueprints of his self-powered car. If leaked, it would spread faster than any attempt to suppress it. Maxwell wasn't only guarding his invention, he was protecting his legacy. Then it happened. A fragment of Maxwell's hidden file slipped into underground networks. At first, people dismissed it as another hoax, but as engineers looked closer, piece by piece, they realized it was real. The design worked. Within 2 days, rumors of the leak reached Wall Street. Energy corporations watched their stocks nosedive. Tesla's share price dropped overnight. Investors pulled billions, sensing a shift they could not stop. The U.S. government scrambled to track the source of the leak. But by then, the fragments had already traveled across the world. From Berlin to Beijing, Lagos to Los Angeles, engineers began experimenting. Some managed crude prototypes that came sputtering to life. Others refined parts of the design, uploading videos and analyses online. The invention became a global puzzle, with thousands working together to piece it apart and rebuild it. Maxwell's idea had become something even larger, a worldwide collaboration. In Washington, this was declared war. Emergency task forces were formed. Cyber units launched attacks on servers suspected of hosting the leak. Diplomats pressured foreign governments to silence talk of the technology. But the harder they tried to bury it, the faster it spread, and through it all, Maxwell stayed silent. He gave no speeches, no interviews, no press releases. Critics grew restless. Supporters grew uneasy. Was he preparing a larger reveal, or was he simply letting the world clash over his work? Then, unexpectedly, Maxwell appeared. Not in America, not in Europe, but in China. At a major tech summit in Shanghai, he walked onto the stage without prior notice, without media leaks. The cameras turned toward him, and the world held its breath. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Instead, he motioned toward the car behind him. It powered on instantly. The lights glowed, the dashboard lit up, the engine purred, without cables, without fuel. The audience erupted. Engineers leapt to their feet. Cameras flashed. This was no rumor, no blueprint fragment. This was the car itself, alive and undeniable. In America, chaos followed. News networks interrupted live programming to broadcast the demonstration. Politicians demanded answers. Some called it betrayal. That China had seen the car before its birthplace in Africa or its suitors in America. Tesla executives fell silent. Oil companies went into shock. Was this Maxwell's revenge against those who doubted him? Nations began to divide. Some argued the invention should be free for all humanity, beyond politics and patents. Others saw it as a weapon, a bargaining chip for dominance. And at the center, Maxwell simply smiled, as though he had expected this all along. Then came the twist. Just after the demonstration, Chinese officials stepped forward. With one handshake, they announced a partnership. Maxwell's self-powered car would be built and scaled inside China. The world gasped. It was clear now this wasn't only about technology, it was about control. In Washington, the mood was dire. Advisors warned the president that if China held this invention, America's influence over energy and industry would collapse. The balance of global power could shift forever. The question was no longer if America would respond, but how far it would go. The media storm exploded. Headlines crowned Maxwell as a hero, a villain, a revolutionary, depending on the outlet. Social media surged with millions of posts. Some praised him as a liberator from corporate greed. Others accused him of handing the future to powerful nations. Through it all, Maxwell remained silent, watching. Soon after, a secret mega factory began rising in China. Rumors claimed it would produce fleets of self-powered cars, vehicles capable of endless travel, untouched by oil prices or charging stations. Satellite images revealed heavy shipments arriving daily. But no one could confirm. Had Maxwell given China the complete blueprint, or just enough to keep the world uncertain? As the factory grew, rival countries scrambled. Meetings in Brussels, Washington, and Tokyo turned frantic. Some pushed for sanctions, others for military action. Fear was spreading fast. Whoever controlled Maxwell's car would control the future.